My father-in-law sent me a text that said, "You're done here. Don't reach out again. We're leaving you behind." I read it. I set my phone down and I said one word back. I said, "All right." No argument, no tears, no long message explaining myself. Just, "All right." And I want you to understand something right now before this story goes any further. That one word, that single word, triggered 51 missed calls, a panicking attorney, a frozen property transfer, and the most expensive mistake my father-in-law ever made in his life. Because what Richard did not know when he sent that text, what he had never once stopped to consider in 11 years, was exactly what I do for a living. And the moment he told me I was done, I got to work. I'm Melissa. I'm 34 years old. I work in financial compliance. I own my home. I pay my taxes. And until 8 months ago, I thought I had a pretty solid life. Not perfect, but solid. I had a husband, a house we put our whole hearts into, and a family I had spent 11 years trying to make proud. 11 years of holidays at their table. 11 years of biting my tongue. 11 years of smiling through comments that were designed to remind me that I would never fully belong. And I want you to understand something before this story goes any further. I am not the kind of woman who cries in public. I am not the kind of woman who makes scenes. I handle things quietly. I always have. So when my father-in-law sent me that text, I read it twice, set my phone face down on the kitchen counter, finished my coffee, and said absolutely nothing. The text said, and I am reading this word for word because I screenshot it the second I saw it. "You're done here. Don't reach out again. We're leaving you behind." I read it. I set the phone down. And something shifted inside me so quietly it barely made a sound. Most people would have called their husband. Most people would have called their mom. Most people would have called their mom. Most people would have fired back a response they'd regret later. I did none of those things. I just thought one sentence. I thought, "All right then." And that sentence, those two words, became the most expensive thing my father-in-law ever said in his life. Let me back up, because you need to understand the full picture to understand why what I did next hit as hard as it did. My husband Daniel and I had been married for 9 years. His family is old money, Southern, and extremely image conscious. From the moment Daniel brought me home, his father Richard made it clear that I was not what he had envisioned for his son. I was not from their town. I was not from their church. I was not from their circle. I had built everything I had from nothing. And apparently that was the problem. Daniel was different in the beginning. He saw me. He respected what I had built. But the longer we were married, the more I watched him slowly drift back toward his father's version of who he was supposed to be. And I kept adjusting. I kept shrinking. I kept making myself smaller so that everyone at that table could feel comfortable. That is what 11 years of trying looks like from the inside. It looks like silence. It looks like laughing at jokes that aren't funny. It looks like sitting in rooms where you are tolerated but never welcomed and pretending you don't feel the difference. 8 months ago, Daniel and I had reached a point in our marriage where we both knew something had to change. We had started talking quietly about a possible separation. Nothing public, nothing dramatic. Just two people who had grown in opposite directions finally being honest about it. I thought those conversations were private. I thought what happened between a husband and wife stayed between them. What I did not know, what I had no idea about, was that Daniel had been telling his father everything. Every word, every doubt I had shared, every moment I had been vulnerable. He had been reporting back to Richard like I was a problem to be managed, and his father was the one managing it. And Richard, being the kind of man he is, decided to get ahead of it. He decided that the best move was to send me that text before I could make any moves of my own. He thought he was shutting me down. He thought he was cutting me off at the knees before I could do any damage. What Richard did not know, and what Daniel had clearly forgotten, was what I do for a living. I work in financial compliance. I know how money moves. I know how assets are structured. And more importantly, I know exactly what to look for when someone is trying to hide things. And I had been looking. Quietly. For 3 months, not because I wanted to blow anything up, but because something had felt off, and I had learned a long time ago to trust that feeling. So when that text came through and Richard told me I was done, I didn't argue. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't respond to Richard at all. I booked the first available flight out of town, flew to see my attorney, and by the time I landed, I had already sent her everything she needed, every document, every account number, every transaction I had flagged over the past 90 days. And I want you to stay with me here, because what happened in the next 24 hours is something I could not have written if I tried. Because 24 hours after Richard told me I was done, my phone had 51 missed calls. 51. and not one of them was from a number I didn't recognize. I landed, turned my phone off airplane mode, and watched the screen fill up like a slot machine hitting jackpot, except every notification was someone panicking on the other end. 51 missed calls, 14 voicemails, 23 text messages, and not a single one of them said sorry. I want you to think about that for a second. 51 calls, and not one of them opened with an apology. They opened with words like, "We need to talk," and "This is getting out of hand," and "Melissa, you are making a huge mistake." That last one almost made me laugh out loud, standing in the middle of baggage claim. I was making a mistake. Me, the woman who had been sitting quietly at their dinner table for 11 years while Richard made comments about how Daniel could have done better. The woman who had smiled through Christmas after Christmas while his mother pretended to forget my name. The woman whose husband had been feeding private conversations to his father like I was a case to be managed and not a person to be loved. I was the one making the mistake. I picked up exactly one call. It was from Daniel. I let him talk for about 45 seconds before I said 3 words. I said, "Talk to Sarah. Sarah is my attorney." Then I hung up. I did not block him. I did not send a long emotional message explaining my feelings. I just redirected him to the one person he needed to be talking to, and I went to go pick up my luggage. I want to explain what I had actually done before I explain what happened next, because people hear the word revenge and they picture something dramatic. They picture confrontations and screaming and somebody throwing something across a room. That is not what this was. What I had done was simple, and it was clean, and it was completely legal. 3 months before Richard sent that text, I had started quietly pulling together documentation on the assets Daniel and I shared. We had a home that we had purchased together. We had joint accounts. We had investments that I had contributed to significantly because for the first 6 years of our marriage, I had been the primary income earner while Daniel built his side of the business with his father's backing. I had documentation of all of it, transfer histories, contribution records, tax filings going back 8 years. I had organized it all into a folder on a secure drive, and the night I got on that plane, I sent every single file to Sarah with a note that said he gave me permission to move forward, because Richard had. When he sent that text telling me I was done and not to reach out, he removed any reason I had to wait. I had been holding back because part of me still believed Daniel and I might find a way through this quietly and with some dignity intact. Richard's text took that option off the table and handed me the one I had been preparing for. So by the time I was sitting in Sarah's office the next morning, she had already reviewed everything, and she looked at me across that desk and said, "Melissa, you did everything right." And then she showed me something I had not found on my own. She showed me a property transfer that had happened 6 weeks earlier. A piece of land that Daniel and I had purchased together 4 years ago as an investment had been quietly transferred out of our joint ownership and into a holding company registered under Richard's name. 6 weeks before Richard sent me that text. 6 weeks before he told me I was done. They had been planning this. This was not Richard reacting to news about our separation and trying to protect his son. This was Richard and Daniel moving assets before I could touch them, and then using that text to try to make me feel so small and so dismissed that I would just walk away and not look too closely at anything. And there it was. That was the moment. That was the moment I understood the full picture. This had never been about protecting their family. This had been about protecting their money. And the assumption underneath all of it, the assumption that had held the entire plan together, was that I would not know what to look for. That I would be too emotional, too hurt, too focused on the rejection to notice what was actually happening underneath it. They had underestimated me in the most expensive way possible. Sarah filed an emergency motion that same afternoon to freeze any further asset movement. She also flagged the property transfer for review because moving jointly owned marital assets into a third party's name without spousal consent during a separation is not just bad strategy. In most states, it is fraud. Within 48 hours of that filing, Richard's attorney contacted Sarah's office. I did not see the message directly, but Sarah forwarded it to me, and I read it standing in my hotel room, eating takeout in my pajamas. It said, and I want you to hear this clearly, it said, "This situation has become a major issue, and our client would like to explore resolution options." Our client, Richard, the man who told me I was done. The man who told me not to reach out. The man who had been moving money for 6 weeks to make sure I walked away with nothing. He wanted to explore resolution options. I put my phone down, took a long, slow breath, and typed back one sentence through Sarah. I said, "Enjoy life without me." And then I ordered dessert. I want you to picture Richard sitting across from his attorney reading those 4 words back off a legal response document. Enjoy life without me. Not typed in anger, not typed in tears. Typed, calm, clean, and final. by a woman who had spent 11 years being quietly underestimated by everyone in that family and had decided 8 months ago that she was completely done paying for that privilege. His attorney called Sarah 3 more times that week, 3 times, each call a little more urgent than the last. The first call was exploratory, almost casual, like they were doing us a favor by reaching out. The second call had numbers in it. They were willing to offer a settlement. The third call had different numbers in it, significantly higher ones, and a request that I sign a confidentiality agreement as part of the deal. That last part told me everything I needed to know about how worried they actually were. You do not ask someone to stay quiet unless you are terrified of what they might say out loud. Sarah laid all 3 offers on the table in front of me and asked me what I wanted to do. And I told her exactly what I wanted. I did not want to be vindictive. I want to be clear about that because this story is not about destroying someone just because you can. What I wanted was what was mine. I wanted my legal share of the home we had purchased together. I wanted my documented contributions to our joint investments returned to me with interest. I wanted the fraudulent property transfer reversed and the land either sold with proceeds split correctly or bought out at fair market value. And I wanted my name removed cleanly and completely from anything connected to Richard, to Daniel, and to that family going forward. No drama, no press, no public statement. Just what was legally and rightfully mine, returned to me with the same quiet efficiency they had used when they tried to take it. Sarah went back with those terms. They countered. We held. They countered again. We held again. And after 3 weeks of back and forth, they settled. Every single term. The house was listed and the proceeds split according to our actual ownership stakes. The investment accounts were liquidated and divided with my contributions calculated accurately, including the years I had carried the majority of our household income. The property transfer was reversed and the land was sold within 60 days with my share deposited directly into my account. And the confidentiality agreement they had asked me to sign, I declined that part. Politely but firmly. Sarah sent back a note that said my client does not feel a confidentiality agreement is necessary as she has no plans to discuss this matter publicly, which was true. I had no plans to post about it, no plans to call anyone out by name, no plans to show up at a family event and make a scene. I simply lived my life. I moved into a rental I loved in a city I had always wanted to try. I took a long weekend trip I had been putting off for 3 years. I started sleeping through the night again, which sounds small until you realize you had not done it in about 2 years. And then about 6 weeks after everything settled, I got a text from Daniel's sister. We had always been cordial, never close, but cordial. The text said she had heard what happened and she wanted me to know she was sorry. Not sorry on behalf of the family. Just personally sorry. She said she always thought I was good for Daniel and she was embarrassed by how things had been handled. I sat with that message for a long time before I responded. I appreciated it. I told her that. And then I told her something I genuinely meant. I told her that I hoped she found people in her life who chose her clearly and loudly and without conditions. Because that is the thing nobody talks about when these stories get told. Everyone focuses on the revenge. Everyone focuses on the settlement numbers and the legal filings and the moment the villain finally had to face consequences. But the real thing, the thing that actually changed my life, was the moment I stopped waiting for people to see my worth and just started acting like it was never in question. Richard thought he was ending something when he sent that text. He thought those words, "You are done here. Do not reach out. We are leaving you behind." He thought those words were a door slamming in my face. What he actually did was hand me the key to a door I had been standing in front of for 11 years, too afraid to open on my own. He made the decision I had been too loyal to make for myself. And it cost him. It cost him significantly. But here is what I want you to take from this, if you take anything at all. There is a kind of strength that does not announce itself. It does not raise its voice. It does not send long, angry messages at 2 a.m. It wakes up the next day, calls its attorney, books its flight, and handles the situation with such calm and such precision that by the time anyone realizes what is happening, it is already done. I am Melissa. I am 34 years old. I built everything I have from nothing, and when someone tried to take it, I simply took it back. Everything I ever gave that family, I gave freely. But what was mine, that I kept? Every single piece of it.